All right, students, today we are going to test similar figures. So I want you to write down similar figures, and I'll tell you exactly what you'll be writing down today. And then I'm going to give you about a minute, and I want you to draw these two triangles. We will also be labeling the two triangles. So make sure you put the letters. This is called triangle FDE. This one is called triangle SQR. And then I also want you to put the measurements for the angles and the sides. Angle F is 34 degrees. E is 106 degrees. 40 degrees for D. Angle R is 106 degrees. Q is 40 degrees. S is 34 degrees. Angles are always a degree measurement. Now the side, which is segment FE, is 8 inches. ED is 7 inches. FD is 12 inches. Segment SR is 24 inches. RQ is 21 inches. And SQ is 36 inches. I'll give you a few seconds to make sure you have all those written down. Today I will actually give you some math symbols as well. The first one, dealing with similar figures. This is a triangle, so it just represents the shape. The triangle, once again, it's called triangle FDE. This little squiggly just means similar to triangle SQR. Now, I'm going to be moving this away just a little bit, and I'll bring it back here. In order for figures to be similar, they must pass 2 tests. So we're going to do 2 tests on these figures. The first test is the measure of the corresponding angles are equal. That means they have to be the exact same amount. Now, corresponding just means in the same relative position. So if you look at these, F would correspond to angle S. So we're going to write that down. Angle F, this is the symbol for angle. Angle F is actually 34 degrees. And if you look at angle S, which corresponds to it, it is also 34 degrees. Now let's look at angle E. Angle E is 106 degrees. The angle it corresponds to is R, and it is also 106 degrees. The last one is angle D. And angle D is 40 degrees, and it corresponds to angle Q, which is also 40 degrees. So, in order for it to be similar figures, once again, to be similar, they have to pass the 2 tests. The first one is going to be the angles. So on the first test, the corresponding angles are equal. So this one passed the first test. Now, the second test says that the ratios of the lengths of their corresponding sides are proportional. And remember, we learned proportional, proportion being 2 equal ratios. So the second test is the ratio of the lengths of their corresponding sides are proportional. Now, what exactly does that look like? Let's look back at this figure. I'll put that right there. Side FE, which we would call it segment FE, which corresponds to segment SR, we're going to actually write down the amount. It is 8 inches, and this one is 24. Remember, ratio, we're going to do it as a fraction. The next one, I'm not going to write them all down, would be FD, which is 12 inches. It corresponds to SQ, which is 36. ED, which is 7, corresponds with RQ, which is 21. Now, these have to form proportions. The sides have to be proportional. You can do it two different ways. You can use the cross products property and test them, or you can reduce them to their simplest form. These ones may be easier to reduce to simplest form. So if I have 8 and 24, 12 and 36, I'm going to reduce them all to their simplest form, 7 and 21. So remember, we're writing all this down. 8 and 24, what do they both have in common? I know they have 2, they have 4, but I know that 24 is also a multiple of 8, so it has 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1, 24 divided by 8 is 3. So that actually reduces to 1/3. So that means these other two have to also reduce to 1/3 in order to be similar. 12 and 36, I know that there's 2, 4, I could also pull out 6, but if I look 12, if I count by 12, it's 12, 24, 36. I know it's divisible by 12. 12 divided by 12 is 1, 36 divided by 12 is 3. So that reduces to 1/3. Next, 7 and 21. I know that 7 will go into both of those. 7 divided by 7 is 1, 21 divided by 7 is 3. That also reduces to 1/3. So, are these two figures, which is triangle FDE and triangle SQR, are they similar? Yes, they are similar because they pass both tests. Now, we'll be doing about 6 of these. We will not be drawing all of them or writing all of these. A lot we'll do, just look at the figures, but we're going to draw at least 2 of them. So before I move on, I'm just going to give you a second to make sure we have this all written down. Once again, similar figures have to pass 2 tests, where the first ones, where the corresponding angles are equal. They have to be the exact same measurement. The second test is where the ratios of the lengths of their corresponding sides are proportional. These are proportional because they came down to the exact same ratio. All right, let's move on to a second one. So I'm going to erase all of this. I'm going to take off that similar figures as well, so it gives me more room on my board. Now, let's look at these 2 figures. They are 2 polygons, or 2 quadrilaterals, better known as trapezoids. I'm actually going to have you draw those as well. So make sure we're drawing the 2 trapezoids. So I'm going to give you just a minute to do that. I will give you the measurements as well once you have both of them written. We want to test to see if these 2 are similar. This is quadrilateral A, B, C, D. So make sure we label it A, B, C, D. The second one down here, we're going to call it quadrilateral J, K, L, M. And I'm going to give you the measurements. We'll start with inside on the angles. B and C are both 90. D is 40. And A is 140 degrees. Once again, 90, 90, 40, 140. Down at the second one, both of these are 90, K and L. M is 40, J is 140 degrees. Now let's do the sides. AB is 7 centimeters. BC is 3.5 centimeters. CD is 11 centimeters. And DA is 5 centimeters. The one down here, the second figure, JK is 11 centimeters. KL is 3.5 centimeters. LM is 15 centimeters. And JM is 5 centimeters. If I'm moving a little fast and you're watching this on your own, you can pause it, write what you need in there. If you are watching it as a class, your teacher can pause as a class to give you a second to catch up. All right, let's test these two figures. So once again, we're going to do two tests in order to see if they are similar. Remember, the first test, we want to see if the measures of the corresponding angles are equal. They have to pass. So I've got to go for my first test. So if I look at this, and I'm going to hold it up for you, and we're going to just match it because I'm not going to write all of it. Angle A right here corresponds to angle J. Both, as you can see, are 140 degrees. So those are good. Let's look at B. It corresponds with K. Both are 90 degrees. Angle L and angle C correspond, and they are both 90 degrees. Angle D and angle M are corresponding angles, and they are both 40 degrees. So did these two figures pass the first test? Yes, they did, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what you can do on your homework. You would just write yes. Now let's look at the second test. In order to do the second test or pass the second test, the ratios of the lengths of the corresponding sides are proportional. So that means they have to form proportions. Or you could reduce the ratio to see if it comes out to be the exact same amount. All right, so I'm going to write down. Now on the first test, I'm not going to require you to write down work because you can just look at the angles and see. However, on the second test, we are going to write down. So let's start with the first one. Now, I've got 5, AD is 5 centimeters, so I'm going to write 5 over JM is 5. I know that 5 divided by 5 is going to be 1. Now, let's look here. How about the next one? Let's do 11 over 15. Well, 11 over 15 is already reduced to simplest form because 11 is a prime number. So that's the answer there, and that's the answer on there. And once I see that they are different, they are not the same, I am stopping right there. I'm not even going to test the rest of them because as soon as one is off, they are not similar figures. So did these two quadrilaterals, are they similar? No, they are not. So my answer would be not similar. So once again, they have to pass both tests. The first test they passed with flying colors. The second test, they did not. As soon as I seen that 3.5 divided by 3.5, it's going to be the same thing as 1, but you can see the other ones are not. 7 over 11, 11 over 15, so you have different. So we're going to stop right there with that one. So let's move on to our next one. We are not going to draw the figures on this, so that ought to make you guys happy. So we are going to put number 1 because we're testing them. So I want you to look at these two quadrilaterals. We better know them as rectangles, but I want you to just look. Obviously, you can see this one corresponds with this one, 90 and 90. This one corresponds with that, which is 90. And you can see they're all 90s. That's one of the characteristics of a rectangle. They have to have 90-degree angles. So yes, it is a rectangle. They're all the same. So do they pass the first test where the corresponding angles are equal? Yes, they do. Now, the second test. As you can see, these two numbers in a rectangle, the sides have to be the same, so those are 50. This 50 is going to correspond with that 45, so we're going to put 50 over 45. Now, let's look at the next one. It's going to be 80 over 72. Now, on this one, instead of reducing it, since there's only two of them, I don't really want to reduce them. I'm going to use my cross products property. I'm going to cross multiply and see if they are proportions, because remember it says that the corresponding sides have to make proportions. So at this time you can get out your calculators and you can multiply 50 times 72, and everybody should be using the calculator just like I am, moving at the same pace. 50 times 72 is 3,600. Now let's do the other one. 45 times 80 is 3,600. So if I would reduce those, I'm going to get the same exact amount. I'm going to actually show you on reducing them as well. What do these both have in common? They have a 5. That would give me 10, and that would give me 9. Nothing else in common, so it reduces to 10 over 9. 80 and 72. Oops, I wrote down 70. Let me change that. 80 and 72, what do they both have in common? I know that they're both even, and if I wanted to look at that, I could do that, or I can see I can pull out an 8 out of both of those. 80 divided by 8 is 10. 72 divided by 8 is 9. And as you can see, I got the same ratio for both of them. So if there's just two of them, by all means, cross multiply and find out if they are proportions. So are these two figures similar? Yes, they are similar, and that's what we would write. Yes, they are similar. Oops, I'm going to make sure you get that all. All right, that's our third one. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to do two tests. So the first test, now let's look at these two figures. Once again, we have two quadrilaterals here, better known as trapezoids. You've got FGHI, MNOL. We can see that F corresponds to M. So we're going to go ahead and test these as we look at the figures. F would correspond with M, which means they both have to be 135, and they are. Let's look at G. G is 90. That means N would have to be 90, and it is. I is 45 degrees. That means L would have to be 45 degrees, and it is. So do these two figures pass the first test? We would write yes. Now the second test. We have to see if the ratios of the lengths of the corresponding sides are proportional. So we're going to go ahead and write down the first one, and we'll start with 15 over 6. Now remember, if I start with this figure, I have to start with it each time. I can't start with this one next. I have to continue with this figure. So this would be 10 over 4. This would be 20 over 8. And then the last one would be 10 over 4. And we already look like we already have a 10 over 4. So we'd only have to reduce it once. So if I have 15 and 6, what do they both have in common? A 3. That leaves me with 5 over 2. So it reduces to 5 halves. 10, 4. What can I pull out of both of those? A 2. It leaves me with 5 over 2. It appears that it's heading the right way, but we still have to test the last one. 20 over 8. Set it up in your upside down division. What can I pull out of both of those? They're both divisible by 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Yes, it reduces to 5 2, and I already know 10 over 4 reduces to 5 halves. So it was yes on this test as well. So yes, they are similar. And that's what you would write. We're just about finished. We have 2 more. First test. Here are 2 triangles. RQS, VTW. So the very first thing we want to do is to do what? We want to test to see if the measures of the corresponding angles are equal. So the first one, let's look at angle R. It's 38. It corresponds to angle V, which is 44. Well, those aren't even the same measurement. At that point, I'm stopping and saying, no, not similar. I don't even have to test anything else. As soon as one of them fails, then all of it fails. And you can see, if you had picked Q and T, they didn't match, neither did S and W. So this is a not similar. The last one are 2 triangles again. Triangle BAC and EDF. Let's start with our first test. What is it? To test if the measures of the corresponding angles are equal. Angle B corresponds to E. It is 30. Angle E is 30. Angle A corresponds to angle D. It is 104 degrees, and this is 104. Angle C is 46 degrees, and angle F is 46 degrees. Do they pass the first test? Yes, the answer would be yes. The second test. Remember the second test. The ratios of the lengths of the corresponding sides are proportional. So, let's write down our first one. It's 9 over 3. The second one is AC is 6. 6 matches up to 2. 12 over 4. Well, guys, this one comes out to be pretty easy because 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 12 divided by 4 is 3. So, yes on the second test, yes, they are similar. All right, to wrap it up, once again, in order for 2 figures to be similar, they must pass 2 tests. The first one, the measures of the corresponding angles are equal. That means the exact same measurement. And the second one, the ratio of the lengths of the corresponding sides are proportional. At this time, you guys will go ahead and start your homework. Thanks.